Hello, bonjour. Welcome to Sugar for Your Lemonade, the neutral platform to discuss and normalize self-healing to the masses. Welcome your hosts, Ashval and Mel.
What are you celebrating this week?
Oh boy, I was trying to come up with something super nice and fluffy, but all I'm celebrating really is I purchased a really brand new Mac computer yesterday and I'm fucking pumped about it.
There's nothing fluffy about that. That's a huge purchase. That's awesome.
What are you celebrating?
Honestly, I'm celebrating that I was able to set up 2 microphones to GarageBand because that is an hour and a half of my life I'll never get back, but I am a pro now. So.
Yeah, I'm so impressed. Your improvement with the technology world, I'm literally Ashley, how do I do this now? I don't know.
Maybe that's my overall kind of big thing for the past 6 months.
It is.
I am the tech person now.
Your life, really. I remember teaching you how to use a blender, and now here you are setting up 2 mics to a setup for a podcast. This is amazing.
No big deal. I have another question for you.
Yeah.
It's a little bit deeper.
Oh shit. Okay. We're we're going in right away. We're going in. Okay.
Do you find it difficult to accept compliments or praise about your intelligence?
Oh snap! All about that receiving stuff again, eh? Yeah, definitely. That was a big struggle for me. I'm thinking back in my office days when I was working for this company in Edmonton. I had just moved and I was basically only speaking French. So they hired me because I was French and I could deal with those French customers back home, back in Quebec. And somehow by showing up on time every day and taking initiatives, I kept being promoted. And I was
so the bare minimum.
The bare minimum.
Okay.
This is a little hard worker girl from Quebec moving to Alberta when it's the big boom and literally just showing up at work, you get promoted. And then I was actually doing a great job, so I got promoted and to a point where I was kind of sort of in marketing and contracts. And then I was they're going to fucking realize that I'm not smart enough to be here. One day I'm going to show up and they're going to came out in the office right now. We need to talk. And I'll be I'm so sorry. But really, I was doing a great job and I would get awards and all. And I was how? I'm really not smart enough for this.
So you had a hard time receiving that because it just felt too easy.
Absolutely. It felt easy. I was how do you guys not you can't do this? This is easy. You show up, you just do a little bit above and beyond. And then here I am earning a great income, speaking now 2 languages. And yeah, that was good. Did you ever feel like that?
Well, do you know what it is that you were feeling?
No. Tell me.
Imposter syndrome.
I knew it. I just wanted to yeah, that famous imposter syndrome, eh? It's way more there than we think.
It's a bit of a B word. Let's be serious. It's annoying.
It's,
yeah,
it's fucking annoying.
So it kind of came around, just a little background on imposter syndrome. There's a bunch of different names for it, but just for the sake of things, we'll just call it imposter syndrome. It was discovered kind of late 70s. And fun fact, it was originally thought to only affect women. Because that's around the time that women really started entering the workforce. So there was a lot of just kind of assumption that it's women are suffering from this because they're in a place that they've never really been before, in the business side of things. And so, they felt like imposters. Obviously, that has changed. Anybody can feel like an imposter. It was also thought to just affect somebody in their workplace. But I mean, you can feel like an imposter anywhere, which kind of brings me to my story.
Oh, shit.
So I felt like an imposter, not to be dramatic, but I felt like an imposter basically my whole life. I kind of just based on like how I was raised, I just didn't have anybody to mirror anything for me. So I really had to like figure life out on my own. So I have been winging it basically since day one and just kind of like flying by the seat of my pants, hoping for the best. And I kept doing okay. Like I kept being good, like good enough. And I kept moving ahead and I kept like, you know, succeeding in ways I didn't think I should be succeeding. And everybody like friends and family be like, you know, of everybody, like, I never worry about you. You always turn up on, like, you always come out on top and everything's fine. And I'm just like, like, okay.
Shitting my pants, but okay.
Yeah, basically I'm like, well, at least I'm like fooling them, like, cause I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. So yeah, it was a long time, probably till about my mid 20s ish. Like I really had this theory that it's like, literally, if I can do it, anybody can do it because I am the worst at everything. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not any of this. So like, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And then somebody one day was just like, no, actually not everybody can do the things that you can do. And I was like, oh, are you sure about that? And like, and it really threw me through a loop. I'm like, does that mean I'm good at something? Like it was so strange.
Isn't this adorable? Like when you're looking back, right? And even just, I remember like talking about a bit of nutrition and like a little bit of like workouts and stuff like that, right?
Is this like in your coaching life?
Oh yeah, like, but I just like,
are you still at that business?
No,
place?
I'm no longer at Sound, and I had to segue into being a coach or being an athlete because at that time, same idea came out, right? I discovered that thing CrossFit, where this is where I actually met you, and this is kind of funny that looking back that you're like, oh, I had no idea what I was doing because to me, you were that girl that fucking had it together,
and to me, I was fooling you.
You were fooling me so good because I was like, I need to be like her. And, but it just like looking back, right? Like there's so much knowledge that we accumulated through the years that we just like started talking about it. And I was like, how do you not know that? This is common knowledge, isn't it? And then people would be like, no, Mel, nobody knows that. Or like I'd be like, oh. But yeah, even like being an athlete, I remember like, oh God, you got to remember that when the first time I made it to regionals as a CrossFit athlete, I remember like...
How many years ago was that?
Gosh, 2013. So 7 years.
Okay.
Yeah, 7 years. So I remember like being in the corral and just right about to go for my first event. And like, it's huge. Like I was like, holy shit, all my friends are here. There's a lot of people going to be able to watch me.
The camera crews.
Like
people being interviewed.
Yeah, this is crazy. And then I'm sitting there, I'm like, I must have cheated in the open. Like there's no way. I'm sure like my judges counted wrong because there's no way I should be here with these guys. And then it's kind of funny, right? Because I go onto that first workout and I blanked. I don't remember anything. All I remember is doing some really weird pull-ups on the bar. But I just remember I finished first. And then I was like, holy fuck, I actually do belong here. But even finishing the regionals, I was like, they're going to come in and be like, we reviewed your scores. You cheated. And I'd be like, I'm so sorry.
They come and erase the number off your arm that they put in and be like, you're out of here.
Shame. And I'd be but yeah, there's, that was quite of a big imposter syndrome there. And then continuing to year 2 and like coaching, I'm like, why do people want to give me money to coach them? I'm like, I have no idea what I'm fucking doing. But really, I knew exactly what I was doing, but I just had a hard time feeling like I was worth like knowing that stuff, right?
My memory from you winning that round in the regionals was I remember they kind of pulled you off to the side because you were the first person done. You had the best time, I think, out of everybody. And so they were going to interview you and they're like, oh, like come over here. And they pull you over and they're like, we want to interview you. You're like, no, I'm okay. And you tried to walk away and they're like, no, we're interviewing you. Oh, okay. It was just really entertaining.
And like same thing, right? They would be like, so what are you going to do with the rest of the competition? Or how? I'm like, I'm going to eat my food. I didn't know what to tell them. I'm like,
this is very inspirational.
It was so good. And you know what? Like looking back, I wish I would have kept this, I don't know, interview because I think it would have been pretty entertaining to see right now.
You can probably find it somewhere.
Yeah,
we should probably look for it.
Yeah,
that was adorable.
That was super adorable. And meanwhile, you're like, yeah, just go. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. Hi, I'm French. It was entertaining. Yep.
So moving forward into your career, and because like that, when you made it to regionals, that was pretty early in your coaching as well. Were you even coaching at that point?
I was coaching, but
yeah, I think it was very, very early.
Yeah.
So fast forward some years, how did this imposter syndrome continue to unfold? And then ultimately, how did you get over it?
It's kind of I talked about that before, but it's like the kind of thing that this is where I was kind of receiving like love and being finally seen by everyone. So I started like the imposter syndrome kind of not got away, but it was just like working through it in a sense that I had to impress everyone and I had to be the best athlete possible, which is, you know, maybe not a bad thing when you look at it that way. But at the same time, this was my way to receive love, being seen. So I would attach all of my identity to it.
So your worth was dependent on how you performed as an athlete, not who you were as a person.
Oh, like, yeah, who I was a person did not really matter anymore, right? Like, I remember messaging like athletes like that were a little bit better than me. And I was like, oh my gosh, don't look at my score. Like, I'm going to redo it. Like, it was like a really big like I remember a workout with double unders and I tripped on my rope and I was like, oh my God, my life is over. This is it. Like I'm terrible. And I remember also having guys like dating me or asking me out just because I was a regional athlete. And then after a couple of dates with me or just hanging out with me, they'll be like, yeah, she's kind of a dork. Like she's not, my identity was literally being a CrossFit athlete, winning. If I was not winning, I had a really hard time with it. Yeah, that was hard.
So when was the turnaround point for you?
Turnaround point, I think I had started to do some subconscious imprinting with Vanessa, but I also had like a sports psychology session where I realized that my worth was not associated with my performance. So I was finally able to, like, with doing all of the work, to dissociate. And I realized that even my boyfriend, I would be asking him like, hey, are you still going to love me if I don't like podium? Like, is this going to be okay? And he was just like, are you kidding me? He's like, I don't care.
Looking at you like you're crazy.
Yeah.
Like what's a podium?
What's a podium? Like, why? Like, he's like, and even my weight class, he's like, babe, if you want to compete in 69 kilo, I don't care. Like, is
that the Olympic weightlifting?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. Also CrossFit into Olympic weightlifting. That's kind of when the big breaking point was, because there was a bit of identity crisis there, because I was like, if I fail, because I always attach my worth with being strong. And I'm like, if I fail, then I am no longer the strong girl. Therefore, who I am. Like I'm nobody. Like I'm zero. So all of it was like attached to, my performance. And then, eventually I was able to really remove or dissociate both by doing a lot of like self-work, like really like morning practice, just telling myself that I'm worth it, like every day for about 6 months. That's my 5-minute journal. I am worth it. I am worth it. But also just, I think that's what I did it. That's how it switched for me.
From my perspective, watching you, it was, I definitely watched you struggle. Like when I say struggle, I mean, like I watched you kind of grow through the years, and I watched as I could tell that the passion wasn't there, but you felt obligated to it, right? So there's this obligation to continue performing at this like really elite level, and that you had to podium. And if you didn't podium, you weren't worth being a coach. You weren't worth having personal training clients. You weren't worth giving nutrition advice. Like all your worth was based on that, even though your heart wasn't into it. And then that's when, you had hip pain, and then you had shoulder injuries, and you had things kind of suddenly popping up. And like, it was just really curious to watch you kind of work through that. And then realizing that it's like, actually, I'm a better coach. I'm a better mentor. I'm a better like personal trainer, knowing what my limits are and knowing that, hey, my heart's not in it like it was before, but that doesn't mean I'm any less of value. You're actually more, because you can show that it's like, hey, I can love it from the sideline. I don't have to podium. I don't have to do the best. I don't have to do this. And like, I can just go and have fun. And what was the best part though, was when you just kind of said, fuck it, I'm going to go have fun. You fucking podiumed everywhere. You're like, oh, I won $3,000 this weekend. Oh, I came top of my weight class. I'm like, what the fuck, man? Like, but it took all that pressure off you, right? And like those injuries weren't a thing anymore. And if they did come up, it was like, you knew you were self-checking. Like you had that kind of awareness that it's like, oh, okay, what's the lie here? What story am I trying to tell myself? And you were able to work through it. So it was just really interesting from the outside watching as that like kind of unfolded. And now like watching you transition even now, like, Kate, guys, seriously, if you know Mel, this will make you poop your pants. She went to yoga the other day willingly. Like she signed up. And I was just like,
no, not just yoga, yin yoga. Where you freaking
like
nothing.
CrossFit is like hardcore, high intensity, crazy. And then like Olympic weightlifting is like, I mean, the intensity isn't cardiovascular, but like it's an intense sport. You're lifting heavy weight and like with perfect form. So I mean, like there's such intensity. And then, I'm going to go to yoga. I'm like, oh,
I know, nobody asked me.
But it just shows just how comfortable you are with yourself now, and how this imposter syndrome is really like, you don't buy into it like you used to. And like, no fault in buying into it. I mean, like it was a growth process, but it's just like how you're able to recognize it now. And like, you give zero fucks. Like, hey, my body wants a bit of a rest. I think I'm going to go do a stretch class. It's like, what? Cool. Like, what?
And it's so funny. Yeah, it's adorable. Actually, I'm going to use your word. So it is adorable. And then looking back, also there was a breaking point because there was an open. So the open is basically 5 weeks to qualify for those. I mean, it used to be regionals, now it's different. But anyways,
in CrossFit land,
sorry. And then there was a time
I'll be the CrossFit translator.
Yeah, I guess like everybody knows that.
They don't.
So so I remember doing week 1 and I had really high hopes for myself because I had trained really hard that year, and it was like, I think you're right though. It was like by obligation. Like I felt like I had to work out really hard because we opened that new gym, and it was like I'm this hardcore athlete and whatever. So I had worked really hard, and I did the first event, and I really shit the bed. Like it was not good, and I remember looking at Andrew, and I was like, why am I doing this again? Like why do I beat my body every single day? Track my food, go to bed at 8 for what? What is it again? And like literally, like he had no answer for me that day. Like he eventually came back a week later with an answer, but that day he had zero answer for me. And I was like, I think this was like the breaking point where I was like, I think it's time to look at what else is possible in this
and even
world.
leading up to that, like you had weeks of dread.
Yeah.
So I mean, like that darkness that you kind of fell into was building for a little bit.
Oh yeah.
So,
definitely.
but I mean, like you needed that. Like you needed to hit those points. You needed to hit like those lows to realize that it's like, who am I without this then?
Exactly.
Like, is this really what lights me up? And once upon a time, it absolutely did. But like, who are you without that now? So you were able to start asking those heavier questions, and like, it's a transition.
It is a transition. And like coming back to the imposter syndrome, right? So so this is what I did for 10 years. So now I was like fairly comfortable with my role as a coach, as an athlete. But then it's like, oh, I'm transitioning in hippie land, which was your land. And I was like, who am I to go and heal people and call myself a healer? And I find it so funny because Vanessa and Kelsey are the first one pointing out, like, you have your big shirt right now that says healer, and you're walking around the streets like you own it. But at first it was like, who the fuck am I to do that, right? And I'm sure you went through that too as well, with like, who am I to heal people's trauma right at the beginning?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually my story is not as dramatic or athletic as Mel. Mine is definitely much more like internalized, but I absolutely went through that. Like I also I did start in fitness, I guess. You did. I was only a personal trainer for 12 years. But anyway, I guess I started in fitness. But I went through the exact same thing when I started. I'm like, why are people paying me to tell them what to do to work out? Like, why? Like, and then I realized I'm like, oh yeah, because this is what I know. Like I went to school for this. This is like, I'm educated in it. It's like, okay. But it felt really weird. And like, I think also because I was like 24 years old, I was like, why are you listening to a 24-year-old to do blah, 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 right? But like, I think that's fine. So I got over that.
And then you totally became a healer.
Yeah. Whoa.
And then you took a really big deep dive into hippie land. And this is really funny because I was living with you and you would come out with some like crazy concepts where I was like eating my ramen, being like, what is
You would get mad at me.
Yeah, I would get mad.
Like, not everything has an emotional connection, Ashley. And I'm like, but it does. But even then I was trying to convince myself, right? Because so when I went into personal training, like I was 1000% science. Like if you could not prove it to me on paper, don't even have a conversation with me. But what I started noticing with my clients was things were happening. Like they were having emotional, like I'll call them outbursts. Like they were having emotional reactions in their work because they were having these emotions come. I'm like, what is going on? Like it was so weird. And so the more I dug into it, the more I realized I'm like, oh, like there's a lot here. And like we can call it woo-woo, but it's just science hasn't caught up entirely to it. But man, I went down that rabbit hole and I have not looked back in 10 years. And like, let me tell you the stuff, like it's changed my life. Like it is so cool. But I mean, because science hasn't necessarily caught up to every single aspect of it, they can't measure energy that way. They can't measure exactly what emotion looks like, feels like this. And because it's individual to the person. And anyway, so I had a huge amount of imposter syndrome kind of stepping into that and stepping away from like the hard paper science kind of thing. And like, so when I found subconscious imprinting, I was very excited. And another course I found was body dynamics, and both are like heavily invested in science. So I was like, oh, thank God. But like, even then, like I still felt like an imposter. Like, who am I to talk to you about your traumas? Who am I to do this? Cause like, I don't have my however many years psychology masters, whatever. But then it's like, I fucking lived it. Like I lived it my whole life, and I have healed my own stuff, and I've gotten like, you can't go to school for that.
No.
So as much as like the continued education and like what I have done to educate myself, I still felt like I didn't belong in it.
And that was like, I remember when I took my class, like we had a couple girls like expressing that. And we also had like a girl in class that was a psychologist, and a therapist, or I don't want to butcher her title, and she's like, do you know what? I have no idea what I'm also doing. Like everybody thinks that they should know what they're doing, but all of us are just really like trying our best. Like, I mean, like you can have all the education in the world, but sometimes you'll be faced with like cases that you're like, I have no freaking idea, right?
Mhm.
But like, yeah, I don't know.
But in which case you have the knowledge enough to be like, you know what, this is out of my scope.
Exactly.
And then you pass them on, right?
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
mean, but I think speaking of the education, like it's been about a year and a year and a bit since I've taken my SIT course. And that was my major focus. Like that's when I really started working on imposter syndrome, because I was like, I'm really good at talking to people and making them feel safe and like having them open up to me in different ways. And I'm like, I don't want to lose that skill. Like it's so good. And it's important that I do this. Like, this is what I'm here to do. Like I could feel it in my being, but I'm like, I'm in my own way. Like I'm so annoyed at myself. And I knew it was imposter syndrome. And so I had a group healing session actually that ended up being this whole womb regression, which is a totally different podcast we can do later. But anyway, I essentially like, I had this epiphany that it's like, I could have every single degree out there. I could have every education and everything, and I still wouldn't feel good enough. I still wouldn't feel like I was qualified. I still wouldn't feel, because it doesn't matter. And like imposter syndrome doesn't discriminate, right? Like you can be technically the most qualified person in the entire world and still be shitting your pants. So having that epiphany, I was like, oh, like I just need to trust myself. I just need to know that it's like, I know what I know and I know what I don't know. And that's what's safe. And like, that's where I need to like know, like, that's where my truth is. And so it's been a year though, like a solid year. And it's like, we were kind of deciding what to do for our first podcast and coming up with imposter syndrome. I'm like, I am so calm. I'm chill. Like I have no reservations about this. If this falls on its face and we don't have even one subscriber, like that's cool, man.
That's
like
cool.
We'll just keep going.
Yep.
Whereas like, I wouldn't even consider this a year ago. Like I wouldn't even look like, nope. That's like, I'm not going to like, I wouldn't know what to say. I'd probably say the wrong thing. I'd screw up and like, and so I would talk myself out of it a million ways before even like turning on a computer. And now I'm like, hey, let's fucking do it.
Let's do it.
Let's try it.
And she bought the mics.
And
She
so-
set up everything.
I think the biggest takeaway I've had, and it's thanks to Vanessa actually. She gave me this statement, and it was when you're being an imposter, like true imposter syndrome is when you are not being who you are here to be. So any moment you spend denying your own truth and ignoring your truth and chalking it up to luck or coincidence or like just if you're constantly downplaying yourself and just if you're not owning what you're here to do, that's when you're being an imposter. You're not an imposter when you're standing in your truth. You're not an imposter when you're preaching and talking and teaching from the heart. Like even when people don't agree with you, like, when you just know who you are in it, like that is when you were being all of you. You were never an imposter if you're speaking from your heart and your truth.
That's so beautiful.
It was it was a big, like it was one of those ones where I was just like, huh? Like my eyes just kind of, and I don't know where I went. I was just staring at the wall or something, but I was just like, whoa. And it's almost like I could feel my body recalibrating. It's like my body knew the truth before my mind could really wrap its head around it. But I was just like, that is intense. Cause like, how many areas is that applicable to?
Absolutely.
Right?
And for like you guys listening that don't know who Vanessa and Kelsey are, I feel like we keep throwing them like, oh, Vanessa. So Vanessa and Kelsey are they started the Empowered Healers Academy, and they are basically, I'm going to say it, they're our mentors. Like they're really amazing and supportive of our work, but they also are the ones that really got us into this beautiful work that we're doing.
Well, because they are the creators of subconscious imprinting. And that's what we do with our clients now. But yeah, like they are amazing human beings. You can check out their podcast too at the Renegade.
The Renegades?
Oh shit.
We love you girls. We love you guys. We know what podcast is.
I just haven't subscribed. I know the picture. No, it's the Renegade podcast. Or just look up the Empowered Healers. Like they are just amazing human beings. So yes, that's who we keep referring to. But like it's been a game changer, like that course and like just that healing. And it has been why I'm able to get through, like heal through imposter syndrome, right? Like acknowledging when it happens. When I feel like
that's a big
when
one.
I feel like, oh, like maybe I shouldn't. I'm like, do I really feel like that? Or are we just like, are we anxious? And then it's like, it's funny because a lot of times it's actually excitement. Like anxiety and excitement are very closely related in how you feel it in your body. But like the body's almost defaulted to the negative. So it's like, oh, I'm really anxious. Like, I don't know. But it's like, if you take a second and ask, like, are you really anxious? Do you really feel like a fraud? Do you really feel like an imposter? Or are you kind of excited?
Yeah.
And if you take that second and check in, it's like, oh, I'm excited. And then it's like, it changes everything. And then all of a sudden you're just like, you just feel so light and you can just, you go do the thing.
yeah, I found just also just like acknowledging, right? Like just being like, oh, imposter syndrome, adorable. Hi, thank you.
Totally adorable.
But I don't need you right now. But thank you. Thank you for showing up to try to keep me safe, right? Like I get it. This is a big leap or whatever. Thanks for keeping me safe, but I'm okay. Thank you. And then you acknowledge it, and then it just reduces it to the anxiety to excitement. Now we can just
it neutralizes it, right?
Absolutely,
and I think like I really like what you said there about thank you for keeping me safe. Because that is exactly what it was there to do. Like it kept you safe for a while. It kept you protected. Yeah. So, I mean, you don't just all of a sudden get imposter syndrome, right? Yeah. Like it's a defense mechanism to protect your being and your psyche. So, I mean, yeah, thank you, imposter syndrome. Like I really needed you at one point. Perhaps today is not the day. Yeah, like maybe not so much. Yeah. Like we've come a long way. Like we've got a lot of wisdom now. We don't need you as much, but it's just used to being there, right? So yeah, acknowledging it, giving it some love, being like, hey, bud, you can just continue your little vacation.
Because like when we're looking back also, it just down on me that we've been adorable and lived together for what, 5 years? 4
or 5 years.
4 or 5 years. Anyways, and every night we would have we call them the garage talks. Like we would just talk, or the hot tub talks. And we would just talk and being like, you know what? We really should have our reality show. Like we should, somebody needs to be witness of those conversations, because that's what brought us to grow kind of together. And now, what, 5, 6, 7 years later, finally
like 8 years. 8 years.
Oh,
I know. 8 years. 8 years, man.
8 years.
We're getting older.
Oh my gosh.
We're the elder millennials.
We're still cool. But we are like finally like, launching, and we're like, yes, like we are like stepping into our powers to do this and like share our like stories and wisdom and everything that we've learned down the road, because we do believe that we belong and we don't have that imposter syndrome creeping in all the time.
Whereas like 8 years ago, we were just thinking we're hilarious. We're like, oh, haha. But now it's like, oh, actually, no, that's a good idea.
We should have recorded all of them.
We couldn't have done that 8 years ago, though. Like, just not. So Mel, another question for you. How do you notice this? Like, do you notice imposter syndrome in your clients?
Oh, boy.
And do you notice like a theme? Like, is there a certain demographic? Is there a certain age group? Or is it kind of across the board? Like, how does imposter syndrome show up with your work?
Well, I had some really recent cases, but like I would say that it shows up mainly in women. Also, because I would say that mainly what I work with is women. So I guess it's hard to say, but I would say people that have been really like the rule followers, like from the start, like the really good students.
The good girl.
Yeah. Like the people that have been identified as, the good and the wrong, right? Mm-hmm. So like, being a good girl. Women that are stepping into big roles in their career, I found that it shows up a lot. Like they're just like, oh my God, people will realize I'm not really smart enough to be here, or stuff like this is where I've been noticing it. But also in entrepreneurs, everybody that wants to start like a small business, they have lots of talent. But it's safer to stay in my 9-to-5 job that's not firing me up. But like, who am I to be a photographer? Who am I to be this? Like, I'm not good enough. So this is where I've seen it. And this is where I help, I think, people like pushing through it and growing through it. Where did you see it?
Similar. Most of my client base is also women. Yeah. But I've definitely had like probably a handful of women that are very high up in their company. And like they're either there when they have their session with me, or they've been promoted since having sessions. And there's a lot of imposter syndrome around like, well, are they promoting me because I'm good, or is it because I'm a woman and they have to fill a certain, right?
Yeah.
So that's a pretty heavy one, right? Like, do you actually think I'm good at my job, or do you just need to make it look like you have more women around so that you don't get like foo-fooed on something, right? So like working through a lot of that, and a lot of worthiness. Like a lot of people downplay how good they are at their job, and are willing to kind of pass the buck. They want to keep things smooth. They don't want like anything between colleagues. Just don't rock the boat kind of thing. A lot of don't rock the boaters. My goodness. But really, what I found is it really comes down to self-worth and acknowledging your worth. Because like you can have really high self-esteem. You can hold yourself with a really like upright posture that's very authoritative, and like people are almost maybe intimidated by you, but you have this like commanding authority in your posture. But meanwhile, you're just like, what's going on? I hope nobody sees what I'm doing. Oh my God, right? And you're just like panicking. But like on the outside, people are like, oh my God, she's so strong. Together. She's so great. Like she is just like, professional, all of this stuff. And like, that's where I find a lot of discrepancies between esteem and worth. So a lot of the work is done on claiming your worth, acknowledging your worth, realizing that it's like you didn't accidentally get here. Like you're really fucking good at what you do.
Yeah. Isn't it funny how like we can constantly we're looking for external validation, external love, external, like making somebody telling you how good you are because really all you need to do is to believe that you are good enough, right? Like finding that your inner, like knowing that you are good enough. That was like such a good one from Untamed, that book. I think it was right. The inner, like knowing, like you don't need anyone to tell you how good you are. You know how good you are. But getting to that point is like so much work to do, right?
Well, and the thing is, like, you can be told how amazing you are by 1,000 people and one person has something negative to say. Which one are you going to remember?
The negative.
Right?
Absolutely.
Until you have your own worth. And then you can look at that negative one and be like, who hurt you? Do you need a hug?
Do you need a hug?
What's going on?
Yeah.
Little keyboard warrior. What's going on? Right? But I mean, if you don't have that sense of self and that like centering in who you are, you're going to take that to heart and you're not going to look at the other 999 glowing reviews. You're going to look at that one.
And here's like a homework that I've been given, that I have been giving to people, that I would recommend everyone to do, is as soon as you receive a compliment, instead of brushing it away, because that's what we're basically
trained to do. Don't brag about yourself.
Don't brag. I'm bragging all the time now. Thanks, Kels and Vanessa. But I receive it. Thank you. I receive that compliment. And then sometimes it's like weird to say it out loud, but I make my clients do it saying out loud for the first, 20, 25, like as not whatever creates more for them. I'm like, you need to say it out loud. And then at first it feels weird, but then, hey, you're looking great today. Thank you. I received that. So that would be my homework for you guys, to just go on and use that on your everyday, every time you receive a compliment.
I have a funny story.
Okay.
It involves our good friend Kelsey. So I went on Facebook and I wanted to make a soup of some sort. I had some onions. And so I was like, hey, what should I make with this? And somebody recommended French onion soup. And I was like, hey, that's a great idea. And all Kelsey's comment was, I'll have some of that. Or I receive your soup. I'm like, did you want some soup? Right? But I mean, like, she just put it out there like, hey man, I'll take some of that soup. Like, didn't even ask, but I will receive that. Right. So It's like being able to receive is huge. And so it's not just like compliments and stuff, but like just throwing it out there like, hey, I'm willing to receive it all.
Yeah. That's a great exercise to do. And then it opens the door to receive way more. And it's been a beautiful exercise that I've been doing. And I still do it because I catch myself sometimes being like, oh, whatever. And I'm like, you know what? No. Thank you. I received that.
That's a really good one. I think I should start using that with my clients too.
Yeah,
I like that.
Do it. It's a
nice
game changer.
Easy. What I've also found though, as far as like being able to receive that, the body might not agree.
Ooh.
And so I have found that when you do start receiving and acknowledging your worth and, seeing who you are, your body can get kind of like antsy, right? You might get like a little queasy in your stomach. You might feel like, I don't know, like for me personally, I felt really cold and kind of like jittery almost, like I was kind of shaky. And I literally had to give myself a hug. I would give myself a hug and I would kind of like stroke my tricep, like, you're petting a cat. And I know this sounds really weird, but it's highly effective.
This is where we lost people. I'm petting my tricep as a cat.
I want you to pet your arm like a cat. No, but seriously, like, or you can even have your hand on your chest and like kind of rub your heart space, like just gently rubbing your heart space and telling your body it's okay to receive it.
Oh.
Because consciously, like the brain body connection can be really disconnected. And so consciously you can say these things like, hey, I received that. But then your body's like, nah, like kind of like freaking out. And it's just like, body, you're safe to receive. And so you can like let your body know by giving like that little hug, rubbing that heart space. You can rub your belly too. Because like we hold a lot of our anxiety in our guts, right?
Well, shit, I've learned something else to apply. I'm so happy.
Going to throw out there, if you are going to do the tummy rub, like to the left, like rotate to the left, just poop exits via left side. So just like, you don't want to bung yourself up. So, here
it is.
Like, I love the body, Kate.
No, that's okay. I just love that we talked about poop on the first episode. This is my favorite. This is great.
Poop is very important. But anyway,
we're going to be talking about poop eventually in another episode, but
very likely.
Yeah.
But yeah, like reassuring the body as well as the psyche, like letting the body know like, hey, you're safe to receive this. And like, that makes a big difference too. And then just watch yourself literally like open your arms to receive things. Because they'll just walk in a room, hey, I'm awesome, right?
Yeah.
Arms are wide open, give it to me. And like, it's awesome.
It's so natural now. Like I just brag about, like I would grab my Voxer and like Vox with Kelsey and I'm like, hey, this is what I did today. Bye, have a good night. Like I just, yeah.
Well, and it really sets a platform to encourage each other. And like when you're winning, I'm winning. And when, my other friend over here is winning. Like when we're all talking about how we're winning, like, do you feel like an imposter then?
No, it's
right?
like a beautiful energy.
Like you get so amped up about yourself and you get so excited, like you're really doing these things and you're getting acknowledged for it by your peers. And so like that imposter syndrome really doesn't have much of a chance. And then if you do feel like creeping, well, you got your team. So I definitely recommend having at least a small group of people that you can rely on.
If you don't have anyone, we're available. You can message us.
You can follow us, Sugar at Your Lemonade. Oh my goodness. Sugar for Your Lemonade on Instagram. You can DM us. We'll give you a pep talk. No problem.
We're super pep talk people. Yeah. Anyways, I think this is a good way to end this first episode. Thank you for receiving me in your beautiful home for this podcast. That was great.
We're set up in the lovely basement.
And Tuffy, thank you for letting us record this episode.
Tuffy is my senior chihuahua. So if you ever hear him hacking, he's okay. He's just an old man. All right. Thanks for coming. See you guys next week.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you heard, don't be shy. Leave a comment and a 5-star review. Remember to subscribe to our podcast and YouTube channel. And while you're at it, follow us on Instagram. Oh yeah, and make sure you tell all your friends. We hope you were able to take away something new from this episode and maybe even find a new way to make lemonade out of your lemons. If you're still feeling a little sour, try a session with Ashval or Mel. Check the booking link in the show notes. This has been Sugar for Your Lemonade, signing off.